Alright guys, I'm sure this video needs absolutely no introduction, as obviously we just got a brand new box into Duel Links, which means new meta, new decks in the top tiers, and it's time to rate where exactly I think those decks are going to land once the meta sort of settles. So without further ado, let's get into a tier list. So a little bit of context before we jump into it. There have been a couple of major tournaments that have been done or held since the new box has been released. We had a Damage Step and we had a Grand Prix, both of which had over like 150 participants per, which is a lot of people playing, so we should get a rough idea from these two tournaments roughly how the meta is going to be. Obviously, it's super early on, so we can't judge just purely from these tournaments, and maybe once some people learn how decklist plays, or different tech cards get discovered, or whatever else, the meta might change a little bit, but we should get a rough idea of how it's going to look just based on these sort of tiers, or these top cuts and whatnot, and obviously from my own personal biases, I'll form different opinions as well, and hopefully give you guys some pretty hot takes as to where I think some of these deck lists are going to land. Alright, so before we jump into this tier list, just a reminder, if you guys enjoy this kind of content, want to see more deck lists from me in the future, more guides from me in the future, and more tier lists from me in the future, please remember to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I'm getting very close to 100k right now, so maybe if all 6,000 of you that are having to watch this video go and check out go log into an alt account and subscribe, I'd reach 100k just off this video. So yeah, please go do that. Alright, let's jump into this tier list. Alright, so to start with, we've got Shiranui. So Shiranui is an interesting one because I sort of predicted that Shiranui would kind of be falling off a cliff. It was already looking like it was downtrending before the new box. And now with Sky Striker in the game, which is a very heavy, like, anti-banishing graveyard sort of stuff, I thought this deck would be fairly dead. But from the two tournament results, it turned out the art type just did well in both of them. It top-carded in both of them with fairly high numbers for how many entered. So I can't put this any lower than tier 2. It is a really good deck. I'm still not convinced it's a tier 1 deck. I don't think it's... Yeah, I think there's definitely decks in the game that are better than this. And I do think there are some counters in the game that are going to get more popular as the meta sort of progresses. And as they do, I do think Shiranui might be on a bit of a downtrend. So I'm going to put it in tier 2 for now. I'm not... Yeah, if this ends up being tier 1, I'll be surprised. But I do think just based on tournament results, it'd be pretty stupid for me to put it any lower than tier 2. So we'll put it in there for now. Alright, Destiny Hero. So, you're going to hear this a lot throughout this video. If you're a back row deck that is purely reliant on just your back row, your deck is probably done in this format. Striker is going to murder you. Striker is a really strong deck into back row reliant deck lists, so if you're a deck that is reliant on just back row and tech cards, you're going to struggle immensely. And unfortunately for Destiny Hero, it is a deck that is almost like entirely reliant on its back row cards, so this is like... I guess it's playable, but it's not even... I wouldn't even call it rogue tier anymore. I wouldn't put it in bad tier, because it definitely beats things that aren't Striker, or can sort of beat them sometimes, but with Striker in the format, if you're a back row deck, you're donezo. You don't have a chance. So once again, we've got Constella here. It is another back row deck, another tech deck. It does play a lot of hand traps, I guess, which is a bit more than what DD plays, but yeah, it's just... Especially considering this deck's strength is going first, and a lot of the current meta decks, would that be TG or Striker, the new decks I mean, both of them are really, really good at going second. So this deck list, it's good at going first, but the entire meta wants to go second, so it actually kind of gets counted in that way, and it's going second obviously isn't very good, so I don't think Constella is even a rogue tier deck. I think this deck is also only in the playable tier. It's also very reliant on trap cards as well, outside of its hand traps, so yeah, I don't like this deck too much. Alright, first of our new decks, Striker. So, there have been sort of 2 major tournaments and 1 sort of major tournament with like 100-ish players, and all of them were won by Striker. I literally can't put it anywhere else. It's obvious where it's going to go. Tier 1. It's not tier 0, there's been no showings of like, it completely decimating the format to a point where no other decks can be played or anything like that, but it's pretty clear it's winning everything right now. Even without a main phase 2, even with all like the restrictions and stuff, it's winning everything. Even during the Grand Prix, if you guys didn't see the deck list that won this guy was playing a single copy of Ray. One Ray. He was playing no copies of Shizuku. He was just getting the free one via the skill. And he won the entire tournament. Incredibly free-to-play list, won an entire Grand Prix. Absolutely insane. So, I can't put it any lower than this. Current format-wise, it is good into, like, all the graveyard decks, as obviously it has a great spell card that removes graveyard cards, so with a lot of graveyard decks being popular, with zombies and stuff, it just kind of makes sense. It's also an insane deck going second, which is kind of weird to think about. Mostly Yu-Gi-Oh! Has always been known as a going first sort of a game, a lot less in Duel Links than like a game like Master Duel, but it is still more of a going first sort of a game generally. And Striker that is a going second deck that loves going second. Going first has a nice little way to sort of delay the game to go second, and then you just win the game, so absolutely insane. Also important to note that of those 3 tournaments, they were all different formats. So one was double elimination, one was single elimination with Swiss format, and one was something with a side deck or something, and it won all 3 of those formats, so it's not even like a different format thing, like a side deck thing or anything like that, it's just winning everything, so it's tier 1. But like I said, I don't think it's going to be tier 0 or anything like that. Yubel, okay, this is just bad. Yeah, Yubel had its small time to shine when the meta was a bit weaker. Now the meta is no longer weak in any sense whatsoever. I can't even, this is almost despair tier at this point. It is really bad. Actually, I think I'm going to put it in despair. It's not winning anything anymore. You can even summon out your big boss monster, and Sky Striker will take that monster and make it their monster. This is not doing anything anymore. Absolutely nothing. But sitting behind one big guy and just preying on your Super Poly, it's not a thing in this meta currently. It's just not good. Speaking of probably not good, we've got your Reptile Ogdadic, or however you pronounce this art type. This one is really incredibly hard to judge because there hasn't been, even in these 2 tournaments, if you look for how many participants there were playing it, there was no one playing it in this one. Maybe in the other category there was maybe a 1 or 2 or something. In the GP, I think there was 2 of them or 3 of them. So without people hard testing the deck list, it's hard to judge whether or not it's actually a playable deck or a completely awful deck or anything like that. From just initial viewing, it doesn't seem very good. It seems like the kind of deck where it can do a shitload of stuff. It just spams summons, but doesn't really end on anything too spectacular, which is probably not very good for it. So, at least for now, until I see some actual results, because I've seen literally no one playing it, no one testing it out, and just nothing, I have to put it in bad. I want to put it in playable, but I haven't seen a way that it's been playable yet. No one's shown me a way that's playable, and I haven't tested it out myself. So, this one I could be completely wrong on. Feel free to make fun of me in the comments if I turn out to be completely wrong, but I haven't seen a way that it's playable yet, so I think it's just bad. Speaking of just bad, we've got Dark Magician. Dark Magician it thankfully can use the... Get out of here. Thankfully can use the powerful new skill that Blue Eyes is currently using, but outside of being able to use that skill, it's just the worst version of Blue Eyes, and it's much worse than Blue Eyes currently, so I think it's bad, but yeah. I mean, it's probably more playable than this, but I still think it's probably bad. I wouldn't put it any higher than that. It's not winning or topping any tournaments anytime soon. I think even the playable category occasionally tops tournaments, so this one hasn't got hope. Lunar Light. This one is definitely playable. I'm tempted to put Lunar Light in Rogue. I don't know how many... Was anyone playing Lunar Light in these tournaments? I don't think so, right? Yeah, no one even entered with Lunar Light. But I do think Lunar Light's actually a fairly solid deck list. If we look at, the last 4 weeks of tournaments, I'm pretty sure Lunar Light's actually featured in here. Look, any Lunar lists? Lunar Light? Actually, they're not. Never mind. Alright, no one's playing Lunar Light. Lunar Light's kind of weird, because of, if TG turned out to be the best deck in the format, Lunar Light actually farms TG, because their main turn 1 setup is just a negates for inherent summons that don't start a chain, and Lunar Light's a fusion summon, so it just summons to the field via a card, it starts a chain, and TG can't negate it. So if that turned out to be the best deck in the game, it would be higher tier, but spoiler alert, TG isn't going to be the best deck in the game, so it's probably only playable. It also has a bit of non-targeting stuff, which can be a bit annoying for Striker to deal with. That's probably what's really got going for it. I'm going to put it in playable, I think. I might move it up to Rogue later on, because I do actually have a lot of faith in this deck list. Alright, I do think this one's probably better than this one. Alright, Goki. So Goki got technically buffed, but nothing really actually happened with it. It just kind of... It got some new cards, but they didn't really do anything for the deck. It literally stayed basically exactly the same. It got a new card that recycles a spell card back from your graveyard, and a skill that recycles a link monster, I guess. But that was basically it. Even the little gimmick where you could put the dude on the field that points at the extra monster zone doesn't really work too well, as a lot of people pointed out in my comment section when I made that little replay about it. They could just summon in front of the other one, so it doesn't really lock anything. So yeah, it didn't really change a whole lot. So it's just, if it was playable before, it's playable now. So yeah, nothing's really changed with that deck. Crusadia. Now, Crusadia is hella interesting. So the thing with Crusadia is they play a lot of kaijus. Striker hates kaijus. If you kaiju a striker, they've now got a monster in their main monster zone. They can't use their spell cards anymore. So this completely like dicks Striker going first, but like feels like it has a good matchup with the Striker going when Striker goes first. But going second, it does absolutely nothing and probably loses to Striker. So I doubt anyone was actually playing it in any of these events. Let's have a look. Was anyone actually playing this? Someone I think got first place in my point battle with Crusadia yesterday, which is kind of funny. Let's have a look. Any Crusadias? Doesn't look like any Crusadias entered. And no Crusadias. If there's no Crusadias on here, it's kind of hard to judge. Was anyone playing it in the last 4 weeks? Crusadia? Basically, no. Alright, well, it's kind of funny that it has that interesting interaction with Striker, but it's probably only playable. Alright. Next up, we've got your Quantum non-target thingy, which is I'm not convinced on this deck list. I think it's only Rogue. I've seen it quite a bit now, and every time I've seen it, it's been pretty underwhelming for me. It had that one insane result during the KC Cup, but I think now that the format's been power crept by 2 different boxes now, I don't think it's any higher than Rogue. I think it's just a Rogue deck. It's very, very gimmicky. It's super reliant on just this little board lock, and if your opponent can break it with whatever sort of removal, it just doesn't do anything. So, very reliant on a very solid gimmick, but if the gimmick fails, it fails, and I think in the current format, it's probably going to fail more than it's going to succeed. But I just have a couple of weird toppings here and there, so I don't think it's good enough for tier 3, but it's definitely, it's chilling in Rogue for now. Mayakashi. Okay, so Mayakashi looks like it was a bit of an upswing before the new box, but looking at the current recent results, not as many people are playing it, and not as many people are topping with it. I think in the GP, we had a couple of Mayakashi tops, and in the damage step, we had none. There wasn't that many people. There's like 6 people in the Grand Prix, and this one had 7, so not many people are playing it, but it did convert a little bit. And I do think it was on a bit of an upswing beforehand, so if more people pick up the deck again, I think it'll definitely top some tournaments. It's probably tier 3, but I think of the zombie decks of these two, it's obviously performing way worse than Shiro currently, so I have to put it lower than Shiro. It's definitely tier 3. Tenyi, oh boy. Tenyi. The Fraugy itself. I love talking shit about this deck. So It topped in both events, so I can't put any lower than tier 3, but it is not a tier 2 deck. There is no chance. I still think the only reason this deck ever tops is because like people who are really, really, really good at the game refuse to swap off this deck and play a deck that's actually good, and they're just carrying with it. Because I swear to God, I watched this thing lose to Gladiator Beast yesterday. Like, if you're losing to Gladiator Beast, a 10-year-old deck, there is something going wrong with this archetype, I swear to God. There is no way it's anything higher than tier 3. If anything, I want to put it in Rogue, and I think people really should drop this deck and play something that actually doesn't suck. So, it's not even got a good matchup anymore. Striker just banishes their shit in the graveyard. They don't have any protection anymore. They just sit on their Link 3 with a little bit of extra life points and just pray your opponent can't kill you. I have no faith in this archetype. I really want to put it in Rogue, but currently, it's still topping, and if it's still topping, I have to at least put it in tier 3. I have to. It would be too insulting not to, despite how much I hate the deck. Alright, Blue Eyes. This one might shock a few of you. It's tier 1. This is, Blue Eyes was already on a pretty big uptick before the box was released, and after the box, unlike most of the other archetypes, which sort of, stopped ticking upwards, Blue Eyes stayed going up. It is literally topping both the events at a very high amount. It's actually tied first in both of them, actually. And I think both of them had one in Grand Finals and one was in top 4. So, yeah, it is. I think there's even multiple in the top 8 for both tournaments. So, Blue Eyes, it is, I'm pretty sure, tier 1. I'm not particularly sure why. I think its fusion summoning is good versus TG because they can't negate it. But outside of that matchup, because of it's not even that popular of a matchup at the moment, I'm not sure what exactly makes this deck so good in the format. I have no clue. But I guess it's just getting carried giga hard by the skill. But whatever it is winning a lot, and it is topping a lot. So any lower than tier 1 would be a complete just disservice to it currently. It is doing really well, and I should acknowledge that. It is a tier 1 deck currently, from what I've seen. Fossil. This deck is actually rogue. So the cool thing about Fossil is that it can use your opponent's graveyard for their summons. And people are loving the graveyard right now. So I've seen some weird Fossil. I don't know how many people entered these tournaments with Fossil. We had one topping in this one. Do you have any Fossil toppings in this one as well? No, we didn't. I know I had one in my point battle yesterday. How many people entered the Grand Prix with Fossil? Did anyone? Yeah, no one entered with Fossil. If someone entered with Fossil, I think they could top with it. Yeah, I think more people should try out Fossil. I think there's actually a good chance it has a pretty good conversion rate. I think it's as good as the other decks in tier 3, but it's something you shouldn't be sleeping on. The fact you can get rid of your opponent's, whatever her name is, your Ray in the opponent's graveyard so they can't use it is really funny. So I think this deck is being kind of slept on. It has inbuilt DD Crows for a format where everything is graveyard reliant. So it's being slept on a bit. I think it's rogue tier. Don't think it's quite as good as the decks up here. Maybe it's better than Tenyi because this deck sucks. But other than that, it's probably a bit of a rogue deck. Alter guys, so I've said this a billion times this video. If you're a back row deck, you're just not playable right now. Striker is going to tear you apart. Especially considering this deck's entire, its entire game is that you can outgrind your opponent. You're going to try and outgrind a Striker player? You are dreaming. This deck is dead. Is no chance. You're not playing a back row deck, and you're not playing a grind deck against one of the best grind decks of all time. Not a chance. So Altergeist, it's pretty bad in this format. It's still playable, because it's good against probably everything else, or at least playable against everything else. But if Striker is tier 1, it's not any higher than this. It won't even call it rogue anymore. Dream Mirror. I literally didn't even check if this was the card art for other cards in game. I care so little about this art type. It is not a playable deck. People keep sending me these one-card combos, being like, oh, look how insane this one-card combo is. And then their starting hand is their one-card combo starter and 3 Giga Bricks. It's just 3 just random-ass cards. It's like Garnet the deck. You're setting up one combo, and then just a bunch of Garnets. Your going second is abysmal. Your going first is just one negate, maybe one pop or something. No back row, no text. You can't play DD Crow in the format. You're probably playing a deck that probably isn't that great right now. So it is not a playable deck. If there was a lower tier than Despair on here, it'd be in there. This deck is garbage. All right, TG. Oh, TG. Yesterday I actually thought this was the best deck because it was doing super well. But then I saw today's tournament, and oh boy, the drop off. We had, how many people entered? We had 20 TG players, and in Top Cut, there was a singular one. To be fair, he did reach top 4, I believe, in this tournament, so... And in the Grand Harriers tournament, the Grand Prix, we had 4 each Top Cut from being the most popular deck, so even then it was a little bit less of a conversion rate than you'd expect for the amount that entered. But in Damage Step, it dropped off and fell off a cliff, so I think now that more people know how to play against it, maybe it's sort of discovered a bit, but considering the amount of tops it is getting, where it is still actively topping events, it's hard for me not to put it at least tier. It's pretty similar to Mayakashi, honestly. I think if Mayakashi had the same amount of player base as TG had, they'd have the same amount of top cuts. I think they're basically the same sort of power level. Red Eye Zombie, that is actually tier 2. This deck surprises me. So, from all the event topics and all the tournaments I've been seeing, this deck is constantly in the top cut. It is doing really well. Not quite as well as Shira, I don't think. So Shiranoi's probably got a bit of an edge over it. Actually, it did better in this one. I don't think it had as many people in the final, so top 4-ish, but in Top Cut had more. Yeah, he's consistently topping. Probably about as much as Shira, honestly. Definitely similar sort of power level. Yeah, it's a good deck. It's a good deck. These two are actually pretty close to being a tier 1 option, but I think currently they're a little bit worse than the ones at the top, so they're going to sit in tier 2. I'm not even sure why this one's so good. I think the reason this is probably okay, and same with sort of with Shira, is when you get crowed or you get hit by or some sort of graveyard banishing effect, both these decks sometimes have ways to just play through that sort of disruption, which unlike something like some of the other decks in here when they get hit by the graveyard interaction, they struggle a lot more, sort of. I guess Mayakashi can sort of just make their Link 3 and use the banish pile sometimes, but if they can't get to their Link 3 because they got crowed earlier, that's a bit of a struggle. But they can also play through Crow, I guess. I don't know. I don't really know why this deck's doing super well, but it is doing really well, so I can't ignore it. Oh boy, the fall-off. It's not Rogue. Again, said this a billion times, if your deck is relying on back row, this deck's relying on back row, you're going to get completely torn apart in the format. Live Twin is gone. I think there was 0 top cuts Live Twins. We had 3 entered this one, Live Twin in this one, 4, and did any top? Nope. Nope, yeah, this deck is dead. It is completely dead. Unfortunately for the Live Twin players, it had a decent run. It's time to go. It's not a top tier deck anymore. Striker tears it apart. It's also important to note that this deck tries to revive from the graveyard constantly. Striker just banishes your card. It is not the deck to play right now. There's too much anti-graveyard to deal with the twin summon, and your back row is getting destroyed by Striker, so it's donezo, I'm afraid. It's donezo. Alright, Galaxy Eyes. This is actually tier 3. Another deck I was like... So, when Galaxy Eyes was initially released, and it got shit on by Tachyon, and Tachyon just took over, it was still so surprising to read this skill and be like, huh, a skill that just says, add 2 cards to hand, isn't a top tier deck. In what world? So thankfully now Tachyon's gone, it's showing that, oh, we are in that world where it should be in top tiers, and it is doing well. It has been performing fairly well, actually. We had 1 here. I think he made pretty high, actually. I'm not sure. I think it was top 8. Maybe I'm talking out my ass for this one. And we had 2 in this one. Like, it is doing quite well. Definitely as well as these other guys in here, so it's definitely still a tier 3 sort of a deck. Don't think it's rogue tier. I think it's higher than that, but it's not competing with these guys, that's for sure. But yeah, it's definitely a top tier deck. Any skill that just adds 2 cards to hand deserves to be in the top tier, let's be real. Shadow, this is actually a rogue deck. Another deck that's been sort of surprising. This deck has always been in this tier since its release. I think it's just the way the deck sort of functions. It has like a nasty floodgate that if you get it off, can feel pretty good. It has a little bit of grind game, which in a striker format probably isn't the best thing to try to compete with, but against some of these other decks, it's alright. I don't really know why it's always been just roguish tier, but it sort of just has been. Even currently, I'm pretty sure there was a Shadow in this one's top card. Someone had a Shadow. This one had a Shadow. There's a Shadow on top cut for this tournament. Yeah, I don't think it's, I think it's one of those decks that's just going to be surprising if you see it in top cut, but not something that's like, well, not surprising if you see it in top cut. Something that's not expected in top cut, but not exactly surprising if you do see it in top cut is where I'd put it. So that sort of describes what rogue tier is, so I'll put it there. Floor. Is this Despair? It is probably Despair. Yeah, this deck sets up, I think the way this deck plays is it sets up a level 8 synchro. It doesn't even do your Fluor summon. I think you're ending on Berserkion. And if you're trying to end on Berserkion, you're playing this thing. I don't know why you didn't just play, as much as I hate to say it, I don't know why you don't just play Tenyu. Yeah, I think this is like Berserkion and 3 back row and just call it a day. Back row gets torn apart by Striker, and if you want to play a Berserkion deck, just go play Tenyu or something, so... Not a good release, unfortunately. The Baron de Floor thing was very just like... I mean, they could have made Baron de Floor a turn 1 skill, honestly, and it would have been completely fine. The turn 2 thing is not a thing. And the other version of the skill, like I said, is like the Berserkion triple back row setup, which is also not really that good in current format. Speaking of not good in current format, same problem as all the other back row decks over here, the little collection of them. There's actually quite a few little back row decks collecting at this, in this one now. Same issue, it's a back row deck. You're playing a format where Striker's just going to absolutely dominate you. It's not even going to have a chance. So, back row deck gets dominated. Not much else to say about it. Glad Beast. I mean, it's playable. I think we even had one in Top Cut for this event. Yeah, we had one in Top Cut. I think one Top Cut. Okay, if it gets Top Cut, it's got to be at least playable. But I would not put it in. I even feel bad putting it in this tier. I honestly think it's probably down here. I don't think it's higher than that. The issue with Glad Beast is it will never get any higher than like a top 32 max, because as soon as it encounters a matchup it's bad against, which is a lot of decks, it's going to get shit on. This entire strategy of this deck list is, hey, I can't be targeted during my main phase, So if you have no non-targeting removal, or you don't have a Cosmic or MST to remove my spell card, I'm going to make it so that I'm going to destroy your field before you can play the game. But if they have some sort of removal, or any sort of non-target removal, or a way to destroy the spell card, the entire deck falls apart. It is so reliant on a single continuous spell. And if that spell goes, that's it. The deck is done. So it's hard for me to put any... I mean, it is a playable deck, but it's not... I mean, it's playable in the same sense that Dark Magician is playable. I still think I think it's probably still a bad deck. Like, do I honestly think this is the same level as all the other decks in here? The answer is no. I think all these decks are better than this. And if that's the case, it's probably just a bad deck. It's definitely a functional deck. Like, if you take this onto the ranks ladder, you're going to do fine. But when I do this thing, I'm basing it mostly on tournament play. And Gladiator Beast, it's not a tournament deck list. I don't think you should be playing it in tournaments. Despite the one that topped in this event, I don't actually think you should be playing it. How many Gladiator Beasts actually entered the event? Where's Gladiator Beast? Only 2 and 1 made top 32. He did get dropped in top 32 though, but making it through Swiss was impressive, so I'll give him that. But I do think all these decks are better than it. Adolce. The KC Cup Farmer. Where do I put Madolce? I mean, nobody's playing it currently, right? I don't think there was a single Madolce in either of these two events. I don't know. I don't know. This is a deck that really farms KC Cup events. Standard tournaments, it doesn't. But I guess this is a KC Cup coming up. I should probably rate it based on that. And it does farm KC Cup events. There has only been like one KC Cup in the last like 6 where it hasn't been a top cut deck. It's also a bit of a back row deck reliance, sort of. Like, going first, you don't really do a whole lot. Although it has an anti-graveyard teched into it. Yeah, I'm going to put it in playable. It has a bit of anti-graveyard teched into it, which is pretty good in current format. Yeah, I'll put it in playable. Sure. Oh, Synchron. So this is mostly referring to the new skill, but every version of Synchron it's in the bad tier right now. It's not even really playable. I haven't tried out the new skill with Synchron, but from what I've seen from other people, I probably shouldn't try it out. It looks really awful. Like, it does absolutely nothing. The main boss monster is trying to get you to summon, has, like, just no effect, just sits there and does nothing. You can do, like, 2-card combos to end on Quasar, but if your entire, like, hand is being used to summon a Quasar, and that is all you're doing for your turn, you are really not doing very well in current format. So, yeah, I think it's down in bad tier. Evil Eye. Okay. Did any Evil Eyes top this? I don't think anyone did. Although I don't think many people entered. We had 2 in this one. 3 in this one. Did any top? None topped. Is it Rogue or TF? Is it playable or Rogue? It has some weird matchups where it's kind of good against. Like, Striker has a bit of a weird matchup against this, because they can't... Striker really struggles to out a face-up spell card, because if they have a face-up spell card, your main back row mover can only hit, like, can only hit set cards. So, if you have a face-up card, and it makes your monster non-targetable, it can be pretty hard to hit it. It also has a bit of anti-graveyard teched into it. And it's probably Rogue. I think it's probably Rogue. It's got some weird matchups that it's kind of good against right now. But it's kind of reliant on going first. Going second feels pretty bad. But if you go first and just win a lot of coin tosses, I could see you maybe being a Rogue deck. Is it as good as these guys, though? Probably not. Oh, this is a hard one. I don't know. It's either Rogue or playable. It has some good matchups, but it seems to be going second. It's still absolutely awful, which is terrible for it. At least all these other decks will sort of go second sometimes. Actually, I don't know if this deck can go second as much. I don't know, this deck is close. If someone wanted to put this in Rogue tier, I'd be fine with it, but I think I'm going to put it in here for now. We might adjust this playable tier later on, by the way. I think there's not enough decks in Rogue. We might bump some of these up a bit. Okay, Despair tier. We have your Quillfort or Clearfort, or I don't know how to pronounce this thing. The new Pendulum deck. This deck is not great. It is reliant on a Towers monster that can be outed by Link summons, I'm pretty sure. I can't remember what exactly it is. I've completely forgotten. Something in here called Towers, wherever it is. And this thing, I think, is only immune to things with a level. Yeah, whose original level is low on this current card. So as soon as your opponent summons a single copy of your Hello, can I this work? A single copy of this will load. Single copy of Nightmare Unicorn, the entire deck dies. And this is like, what, the most popular card in the game? One of the most popular? The third most popular card in the game? Second overall? And if that gets summoned, your entire deck dies. It's bad. Alright. Unfortunately for this one, I've said this a billion times in the video, it's a back row deck. Back row decks are terrible in the current format. Striker just farms them. Alright, so that is basically the tier list. Do I want to bump anything out of playable into Rogue? I'm not sure that I do, actually. I think these are only playable. I think these are actually the Rogue decks. Is there any random top cuts over here I'm kind of ignoring? Not really, right? Nah, it sort of lines up with what I've been saying. Nah, I think it lines up with what I've been saying. That's basically the tier list. I think that's, yeah, I think that's a pretty good tier list. It's honestly a bit of an interesting format. There's a lot less in the Rogue category than normal, which is generally not a good sign for a format, but I think there's enough stuff in the actual meta where it's fairly interesting. So as long as the meta's diverse, I'm pretty happy with it. It is a very powerful format right now, which is why I think the playable tier is so stacked and there's not as many decks in Rogue. But yeah, I think that is going to do it for the tier list. Overall, pretty good meta. So if you guys enjoyed this tier list video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And let me know your thoughts down below. Did I miss any deck lists? Was there any sort of art types you wanted me to rate? Feel free to leave them down below and I might toss a reply with a tier that I think it's in. And yeah, let me know your thoughts. Did I put any deck lists in any tiers that you completely disagree with? Did I get anything wrong? Let me know down below. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you see you in the next one. Laters.